Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back on Warhammer Wednesday with another episode of the Golden Age, our weekly series of Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports for 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy. And this is Battle Report number 96. It is a 3,000 point battle that is fought between vampire counts as well as Slaanesh Legion of Chaos. My friend Scream of the Emo is bringing House von Koss to the vampire counts, and I will once again be playing the Shrieking Masquerade of the Slaanesh Legion of Chaos. So we'll be throwing these down at 3,000 points, and I'm really super excited about this battle because this is the very first time that my Slaanesh Legion of Chaos will be fighting against a Vampires Count army. So I'm super excited to see exactly how this army does against that. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick and show you pictures of the armies as well as the army lists. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this battle report, go ahead and pause and take a look at your leisure, or you can look down in the description below and you can see the army list displayed there in the description box as well. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Balor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Alright, so the scenario rules for this one is Battle Line. It is the most typical game of Warhammer we play on this channel with standard deployment as well as standard victory conditions. So with the scenario rules over this, let's go and talk about the battle plan real quick. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, we're playing on a 4x6 table. I'm deployed on the near side of the table. My friend Scream the Emo is deployed on the far side of the table. And for the most part, my battle plan on this one is to just move across the battlefield as quickly as possible and engage my opponent in close combat. My Legion of Slaanesh army is a very fast and mobile army. The design of the scheme that I went with is that it's kind of lightly armored in the sense that it doesn't have really heavy choices, but everything is really super fast. And the best way they can defeat my opponents with this army is by doing coordinated attacks on units where basically I'm flanking and also attacking units from the front, catching them in pincer attacks, so that way I can overwhelm them with combat res and destroy them. Which is going to be really important on this one because I am fighting undead. They are unbreakable, so every single advantage I can get with combat resolution in order to destroy their units is going to be super important. So the main of the focus is going to be on the flanks. So pretty much what my idea is to deal with his Hex Wraiths over there on the left hand side by sending in my Demon units to deal with those guys because they have magical attacks, so they can take care of that. At the same time, take on his Direwolves on the right hand flank with my Chariots as well as my Fiends. While that's occurring, my infantry forces will march forward, take on his center, hopefully I can surround and then catch him in a full envelopment and destroy him that way. And then of course try to counter his magic as best I can because vampire counts have a very magic heavy army. And that's pretty much my battle plan for this one. So the battle plan over, let's go and talk about deployment real quick. Alright, so starting with my deployment on the left hand side using Vanguard rules and Vanguard up, I have my Resplendent Stalkers. It is a unit of 5 Seekers of Slaanesh with a Standard Bearer as well as, sorry, that's it, just Standard Bearer. There's no musician in this unit at all. And there's just 5 of them all by themselves. Now in the center is where the majority of my army is located at for all my infantry forces. On the far left hand side, that is the Empty Orchestra. Is a unit of 23 Demons of Slaanesh with a musician as well as Standard Bearer. They also got Banner Swiftness, so that way those ladies are movement 7. And leading that unit is the Infernal Rapture. She's a Herald of Slaanesh. She's a level 1 wizard with the Greater Locus of Swiftness, so that way the unit always strike first. She also has Cleaving Blow for her demonic gift as well, so that way she causes 2 wounds every time she attacks. Alright, in the center, right next to them on the right hand side, that is the Children of Rhine, is a unit of 5 Chaos Warhounds with no upgrades. And right behind them in the center, that unit is called the Beast of the Midian. It is a unit of 25 Bestigor of Slaanesh. They have Musician as standard bearer as well as Marks of Slaanesh. They're packing great weapons as well as heavy armor, and they also have the standard discipline giving them +1 to their leadership. And leading that unit are 2 of my characters. I have Inkari, the Ravager of Ulthuan. She is my Doombolt of Slaanesh. She's also the general for my army. She has a Mark of Slaanesh. She's also got heavy armor as well as shield. She's also got the Steel Claws, as well as a Ramhorn Helm, as well as the Talisman of Endurance, and she's also got the Gnarled Hide upgrade as well, so giving her 1-up armor, 5-up armor saves, D3 plus 5 attacks in close combat. It's just kid out to kill. I love my Doombolt General. And then right next to her on the left-hand side, that is Tajak the Overseer. He's my Wargwar Slaanesh. He's my army's battle standard bearer as well. He's equipped with great weapon, heavy armor, and shield. He's also got the Beast Banner, giving that unit +1 strength and all members in it, so I'm really super excited about that unit. And then finally on the far right-hand side, we have the Flesh Carnival. It is a unit of 20 Forsaken of Slaanesh with the Outfit Mutations as well as Chaos Armor. And that makes my deployment here in the center. Alright, on the far right hand side of my deployment area, I got 3 chariots as well as my fiends. So starting on the left hand side, that is the Call of the Denied One. It is a Gorbeast chariot of Slaanesh. In the center is the Depravity of Enoch. It is a Chaos chariot of Slaanesh, and the one on the right hand side is the Sign of Sylph. It is another Chaos chariot of Slaanesh. And the right next on the right hand side, that is the Slender Slaughterers, as a unit of 3 fiends of Slaanesh. And on the far right hand side, vanguarded up, is my unit called the Nightkin. Is a unit of 5 Hellstriders of Slaanesh. They have standard bearer as well as a champion, and they're also packing shields as well as spears. And then leading that unit, of course, is Telemac and Lyris, the Masked Prince. He is my Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Slaanesh, level 4 wizard with the Lore of Slaanesh. He's packing Pavane of Slaanesh, Slicing Shards, Phantasmagoria, as well as Cacophonic Choir for his spells. He's packing the Sword of Might to give him +1 strength, the Skull of Catan, so that way he can channel up 6 power dice. He's also got the Talisman of Preservation for 4 ward save. He's also got the Allure of Slaanesh, that way you have to take a leadership test and pass it to attack him, which is going to be very helpful against an undead army. He's also got Flaming Breath. He's also mounted upon a Steed of Slaanesh as well. And that pretty much makes up my deployment for this one. So across the battlefield, we have the deployment for House Van Koss, is a 3,000 points vampire counts army, and starting on the left and the back, that is Rolling Bones. It is a corpse cart. That's basically going to make up the left-hand side. Right in front of it is a unit called the Walking Dead of San Reme, is a unit of 40 zombies with musician as well as standard bearer. And leading that unit is 2 necromancers. We have Gauntfield of Carrion Crow. He's a master necromancer, level 4 wizard. He's also got the Book of Asher as well as the spells Invocation of Nehek, Vanhel's Danse Macabre, Hellish Vigor, as well as Raised Dead. And also in that unit we have Sinister Jeffrey, Librarian of Curses. He's a level 2 necromancer with the Lore of Death. He's packing a Dispel Scroll. His spells are Soul Blight as well as Doom and Darkness. Right next to him on the right hand side in the back, that is the Calliope of Chaos. It is a Mortish engine with the Blasphemous Tome, so that way they get 2 up on their casting values for Lore of Vampires. And right next on the right hand side, that is Volkar the Beast of Blutwald. It is a Terrorgeist with no upgrades. And finally in the front we have the Balefire Carnival. The Balefire Carnival is a unit of 49 Crypt Ghouls. Leading that unit, of course, is the Army's General, which is Marduk von Koss, the Baron of Drachenfels. He is a Strigoi Ghoul King. He's also the General for this army as well. He's packing Skabscrath for obvious reasons, as well as a Dragonbane Gem, so that way he's got 2 up save against flaming attacks. He's also got the Aura of Dark Majesty, Curse of the Revenant, as well as Summon Creatures of the Night. And he's also got the Lore of Vampires, and his spell is Invocation of Nehek. And make up his right hand flank, he's got 2 units. First of all, on the left hand side, we have the Ravenous. He's a unit of 6 Crypt Horrors with no upgrades. And right next on the right hand side, that is a unit called the Ghost Knights of Vergun. It is a unit of 10 Black Knights with Musician, Standard Bearer, as well as Hell Knight with full command. They all got lances, heavy armor, as well as shields, as well as barding for their horses, their skeletal steeds. And they also have the Banner of the Barrows, which means that they get to play a +1 to hit in close combat as well. And that makes up Scream of the Emo's right hand deployment. So with his Vanguard formation, starting on the left-hand side for his Vanguard, he's got 2 units of Hex Wraiths. He's got the Mask of the Black Death on the left-hand side and Mask of the Red Death on the right-hand side. And those are 2 units of 5 Hex Wraiths apiece. And finally, for his right-hand deployment, a Vanguard up unit is a huge unit of 15 Direwolves called the Hounds of Tyndalos. And they have no upgrades whatsoever as well. And that pretty much makes a deployment for this army. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Scream of the Emo and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1, and I managed to get the initiative on this one, so I will be going first, which is all kinds of awesome. And as you can see, this photo is taken after the move phase, and for the most part, I just move up as quickly as, well, almost as quickly as I can, because for me to close a distance with this undead army is the only way I'm going to win. So the first thing I do, of course, I declare a charge with my Resplendent Stalkers to go charge directly into the Mask of the Black Death, and then also declare a charge with my Empty Orchestra, which tears across the battlefield and goes smack dab directly into the Mask of the Red Death on the left-hand side. At the same time, I also charge forward with the Slender Slaughters to go charge directly into the Hounds of Tyndalos on the far right-hand side. And then from there, I just pretty much march everything up forward. I move up my Children of Rhine to get in a blocking position between those two forests to tempt anything to come charge at me. I also move up the Beasts of the Midian as well as the Flesh Carnival into movement position so that way they can countercharge. I do exactly the same thing with the Call of the Denied One, the Depravity of Enoch, as well as Sign of Sylph. And lastly, the last thing I do, of course, is I march up my Nightkin with Telemac and Lyris, the Masked Prince, and they swoop over to the far right-hand side on the flank, looking down the entirety enemy formations. That way I can cast spells and cause all kinds of problems for my enemy. And that pretty much makes my move phase for this one. So here's a close-up of the Resplendent Stalkers as well as the Empty Orchestra charging directly into the Mask of the Black Death as well as the Mask of the Red Death. And I'm super excited for this one because my demons have magical attacks, so I'll be able to deal with these Hex Waiths too quick. And here's a close-up of the Children of Rhine as well as the Beasts of the Midian as well as the Flesh Carnival moving up as quick as they can across the battlefield in order to engage my enemy. And here's a close-up of the Call of the Denied One, as well as the Depravity of Enoch, as well as the Sign of Sylph, getting ready to do some counter-charging against my opponent with my chariots. At the same time as a close-up of my Slender Slaughters, charging directly into the Hounds of Tyndalos. And finally, here's a close-up of the Nightkin with Telemac and Lyris the Masked Prince, getting ready to cause all kinds of pain during the magic phase. And speaking of the magic phase, I roll for the Winds of Magic, and I rolled a 7, which means I get to choose whatever depending on my mark, and I got the Dark Prince Thirst, which is absolutely the best ability I can get off against an undead army. And if you're wondering how the Dark Prince Thirst works, is that you roll a d6 for each enemy unengaged enemy unit. If you roll a 6, that unit has to take a leadership test using 3d6, and the difference between the 3d6 that it's rolled as well as the leadership for the unit, they lose that many points with no armor saves whatsoever. And since I'm facing against an undead army, leadership values are horrifically bad for undead armies, so I'm really looking forward to seeing exactly what kind of damage I can cause. As you can see, the Dark Prince definitely thirsts by taking the lives of 3 different crypt horrors, which is absolutely fantastic. Managed to cut that unit in half and render it, for the most part, combat effective. Now, of course, I do have to worry about the guys coming back again because, you know, vampire accounts are notoriously good at bringing back the dead. However, though, that's at least, hopefully, maybe he might not spend his magic spells on that unit. Maybe he might focus on something else. Either way, it's always a good thing when an enemy unit is cut in half for the most part. Unfortunately for me, in the magic phase, when I went to roll to channel dice using the Skull of Catan, I rolled 3 1s, and unfortunately I did not get any power dice as a result of that either. It's because I have a -3 to my leadership for Telemac and Lyris, and at the same time the voices are starting to make sense to my character. And for the most part, I managed to atomize what was left of the Ghost Knight Reservoir gun. I managed to kill 6 of those guys right off the bat. The reason why I was able to do that is because I cast Phantasmagoria into the unit, so that way when I roll for my Cacophonic Choir, which is the next one I did, of course, basically the roll addition, they also got to take some damage from that as well. So you can see there from the end of it, I managed to kill 6 of those guys, which was all kinds of awesome. Gave them always strike last as well as random move a d6, which is really good because it really crippled that unit for the most part, and that was awesome. So for the magic phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. End of the combat phase, my Resplendent Stalkers had no problem whatsoever wiping out the Mask of the Black Death, and the exact same thing happened with the Empty Orchestra, just wiping out the Mask of the Red Death without any problems whatsoever. It's amazing what you can do when you have magical attacks going up against Hex Wraiths, which is all kinds of awesome. Meanwhile, combat between my Slender Slaughters as well as the Hounds of Tyndalos was all kinds of awesome. As you can see in this photo, I had no problem just chopping that unit almost in half. I managed to kill 8 direwolves when it was all said and done. They managed to put 2 wounds onto my one of my Slender Slaughters, which is kind of sad. But needless to say, I won this combat by a landslide. With the number of wounds I caused, plus I charged, I basically vaporized this unit with instability rules. And just like that, the Hounds of Tyndalos have evaporated into the night, and then I do a quick combat reform of the Slender Slaughters in order to deal with the rest of my opponent's army. And that pretty much makes it the combat phase for this one. So the combat phase over with, you go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the vampire counts. Alright, so that takes directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the vampire counts, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see in this photo, my opponent does try to charge forward, but unfortunately though, he just kind of fails for the most part. First off, he decides to declare a charge with the Crypt Horrors from the Ravenous, and unfortunately for them though, they just couldn't close the distance. They went forward, I think like 6 inches, I think is when they ended up going forward, so they kind of went pretty quickly, but they just kind of fell short for the most part. So because of that, my buddy decided to just march everything up forward, kind of, you know, gingerly in order to protect his flanks for the most part. So you can see here what he does, he decided to march up the Walking Dead Samurai using that impassable hill in the left-hand corner to protect his left-hand flank. He also has the Calliope of Chaos moving up forward as well to protect the Walking Dead's right-hand flank, at the same time protecting the left-hand flank of the Balefire Carnival, which also marches forward as well. And then right behind him, of course, the Rolling Bones, the Corpse Cart, moves in order to provide some backup. Meanwhile, I think the Ghost Knights of Vergun, I think they move forward 4 inches, I think is what they end up doing for the most part. They just move forward 4 inches forward because of the random movement. And then finally, he also flew over the Volkar, the Beast of Blutfall, flying him over directly into the middle of the table, so that way he's in shrieking range with his Death Shriek ability to my units. And that pretty much makes up Scream of the Emo's movement for this one. So here's a close-up of the Walking Dead of Samurai, the Calliope of Chaos, as well as Rolling Bones, and the Balefire Carnival, moving up in order to engage my forces. And here's a close-up of the Ravenous, as well as Volkar, the Beast of Blutfall, moving in directly to deal my forces in the middle of the table. And finally, here's a close-up of the Ghost Knights of Vergun, which are kind of stumbling forward because they just got their bells rung by the Cacophonic Choir that unleashed earlier in the earlier round, which is pretty awesome as well. So the move phase over with, you go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, my opponent unfortunately did not have a very good magic phase. I was able to pretty much lock down all of his spells and dispel them with all of my dispel dice, which is pretty awesome. However, he was able to get Soul Blight off directly onto the Beast of the Minion, making them lose 1 to their strength as well as 1 to their toughness as well. So that part does suck, but at the same time though, I couldn't stop all of his spells, and hopefully I can delay combat for another round so that way I can make for that spell to go away, and of course I can cause all kind of problems for my enemy as well. So with the magic phase over with, you go directly to the shooting phase. And during the shooting phase, the Calliope of Chaos unleashes with its ghostly howl directly onto my empty orchestra. I managed to kill one of my demonettes of Slaanesh, which is kind of sad to see that happen, but you know, I still have a bunch of them left over. And I do apologize for the blurriness of this picture. That's just unacceptable. I do apologize for that part. But what ended up happening is that both Volkar, the Beast of Blutfall, as well as Marduk von Koss, the Baron of Drachenfels, both those guys unleashed with their Death Shriek abilities directly onto the Beast of the Minion. Managed to kill 5 of those guys right off the bat. So that part was kind of sad as well. But like I said before, I have plenty of these guys still around, so no harm, no foul for the most part. We skipped the combat phase because there's no combat, and we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Chaos Legion. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Legion of Chaos, and so I'm smelling blood in the water, so at this point I just commit and charge forward, was I end up starting to do. So the first thing I do, of course, I recharge with my Resplendent Stalkers directly into the Walking Dead of Samurai. Now the reason why I did that is so that way I can buy me a round of combat. Hopefully they can last long enough to keep that column formation of zombies from getting a counter charge and flanking my empty orchestra, and that's the only reason why I use them for. I mean, they're my chaff, that's what I use them for. I then send in the empty orchestra. They go charge directly into the Calliope of Chaos and engage that in close combat as well. And I'm really super excited to see exactly how that goes. Probably the most dramatic charge that took place, however, was in the center of the battlefield. First of all, I send in the Beast of the Minion. They go tearing through the forest and go directly into the Balefire Carnival, catching those guys into close combat as well. And lucky for me, all my guys passed their dangerous terrain tests, so nothing to worry about there. At the same time, I also charge in both the Call of the Denied One as well as the Flesh Carnival, and they go charging directly into the Ravenous. And hopefully I'll be able to pop that unit, overrun, and then of course engage my opponent's Terrorgeist in close combat and take care of that. That would be the most ideal situation if possible. At the same time, I also charge in the Sign of Self. The Sign of Self can see the back of the Terrorgeist, and so I charge him in as well. Now if you're wondering about the Terrorgeist, if you're wondering how come that chariot is not touching the base of the Terrorgeist, the reason why is because I've actually had this comment come up quite a bit in my videos. People who've ever watched me play against my Vampire Counts opponent have always noticed there's always been a huge amount of space around the Terrorgeist miniature. And the reason why is because the Terrorgeist miniature is actually supposed to be mounted on this huge base, is actually what it's supposed to be mounted on, alright? And that's how come you always see photos of it just kind of by itself for the most part, because we take the dimensions of the base and pretend that it exists there. And just because, the reason why we do that is because if I was to put this miniature on that huge base, it would look goofy as all get out, and that's the only reason why we don't do that. So whenever we charge something or we want to see if he's able to have clearance, we of course take the measurements of the dimensions to see if we can do it. So if you're wondering why that's the case, that's why. Just because I'm cheap, I don't want to build a giant base to put this thing on, because that's just a waste of time and effort and energy for my part, and I just don't want to pay the money for it. So as you can see there, my Sign of the Self was able to see the back of it. So, sorry, not my Sign of the Self, my Deprived Enoch. So because of that, Chaos Chariot charges it directly to the rear. At the same time, I do a long distance charge of the Sign of Self, which makes it directly into the Ghost Knights of Verdun, which is really awesome. At the same time, my Slender Slaughters also charge directly into the right hand flank of that unit as well, engaging in close combat. And the last thing I do, of course, is I march up the Nightkin with Telemac and Laris the Masked Prince. They go directly over the hill into the back ranks of my enemies, so that way they're all within perfect range for me to cast some spells at them. So here's a close-up of the move phase. On your left-hand side, remember Splendid Stalkers take on the Walking Dead of San Reme, the Empty Orchestra take on the Calliope of Chaos, and the Beast of the Midian, getting ready to bring it to the Balefire Carnival. And here's a close-up of the Flesh Carnival taking on the Ravenous alongside with the Call of the Night One, and you can see that the Sign of Self as well as the Slender Slaughters are taking it to the Ghost Knights of Verdun. At the same time, you can see that my Deprived Enoch has really engaged the back of the Terrorgeist. And if you notice, like I said before, there's a huge space around the Terrorgeist, and that's to represent the fact that the base is supposed to be that size. Because it just looked weird just putting that small miniature in such a big base. I mean, it just would. It just look aesthetically, it just looked weird. And finally, here is a close-up of the back ranks. As you can see, the Slender Slaughters as well as the Sign of Self are really ready to bring the pain directly to the Ghost Knights of Verdun. And there's a close-up of the Nightkin as well as Telemac and Laris getting ready to cause some problems in the Magic phase. And speaking of which, we go to the Magic phase next. And in the Magic phase, I managed to roll once again another 7, which means I get the Dark Prince Thirst, which is all kinds of awesome. So I roll a d6 for all of my enemy units. Unfortunately, Dark Prince Thirst wasn't able to do anything for the most part. So because for the rest of the Magic phase, I do cast Phantasmagoria onto the Volkar, the Beast of Blutfall, so that way he has to take an additional d6 test. And the reason why I do that is because the next spell I cast is Pavana Slaanesh, which pretty much works like the Dark Prince roll 3d6, and the difference between leadership values is what ends up being happening. As the amount of wounds they take without any armor saves. However, combined with Phantasmagoria, what ends up happening is my opponents will roll 46, and of course I pick which 3 dice as the ones that basically apply for leadership. So because of that, my opponent rolled a really high number. So because of that, Volkar, the Beast of Blutfall, just gets killed listening to Slaanesh basically make fun of him, and he feels bad about himself, and he just dies from despair, which is all kinds of awesome for me. Not so great for my opponent, but excellent for me as well. So then, of course, I roll for the Allure Attribute, Bliss of Torment, managed to get +3 to my weapon skill initiative as well as attacks for Telemac and Laris, which is just gravy at this point. So with the Magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase and we go directly to the combat phase. So starting off with the combat phase, as you can see, the Ghost Knights of Verdun have been chopped down to the last man. I think it was the impact hits alone that pretty much did it. Impact hits from my chariot, as well as the attacks of the halberds, was able to finish off the Ghost Knights of Verdun. So because that unit was destroyed, I decided to overrun real quick with the Slender Slaughters. They go tearing across the field at 11 inches and go smashing directly into the right-hand flank of Rolling Bones, which is really awesome. I then do a quick combat reform with the Sign of Self, so that way it's staring at the right-hand flank of the Balefire Carnival. Meanwhile, on the bottom of the battlefield, the Flesh Carnival as well as the Call of the Night One had no problem whatsoever just putting the hurt directly onto the ghouls of the Ravenous. Managed to kill those guys to a man. So because of that, I did overrun real quick with the Flesh Carnival that goes charging directly into the Balefire Carnival. So now they're engaged in close combat alongside the Beast of the Minion. And of course, I just remained stationary to Call of the Night One because there was nowhere for her to go. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, I was able to chop up a bunch of zombies with the Resplendent Stalkers, which is all kinds of awesome. Just the amount of kills I was able to do was awe-inspiring. After it was all said and done with combat resolution and everything else, it basically there's only about 20 zombies left, and my Resplendent Stalkers are standing triumphantly. At the same time, I was able to put 2 wounds directly onto the Calliope of Chaos, and the Calliope of Chaos was only able to put 1 wound onto my Empty Orchestra. So because of that, with combat resolution, with rank bonuses, charge, and standards, and so forth, basically I beat the Calliope of Chaos and enough to push her over the edge and make it explode. Now, the explosion, unfortunately, was absolutely devastating when it exploded, as you can see in this photo. And not only does it destroy the Calliope of Chaos, it also takes off a couple of my Empty Orchestra. It totally wipes out my Resplendent Stalkers, so that unit gets destroyed as well. And, of course, the zombies are perfectly fine as well. So it's because the Calliope of Chaos is destroyed, I decided to overrun, excuse me, and I clip the Walking Dead of San Reme. So because of that, they're now engaged in close combat. Over here in the center, of course, I think 2 more of my Beast of the Minion gets destroyed, as well as 1 member of my Flesh Carnival. They also get killed as well. The Wildfire Carnival, as well as the Ghouls, they are perfectly fine, so nothing bad happens to them. However, for the Nightkin, though, 4 of those guys did get killed by that blast. So because of that, this unit has to take a break test because they're only within quarter of the allowance for their unit. And unfortunately, they use Telemac and Laris' leadership, which is leadership 5 at this point, because the Skull of Catan has been whispering to him. And needless to say, I failed that leadership test. So because of that, these guys flee off the board, and just like that, my opponent gets the points for both Telemac and Laris, as well as for the Nightkin. So with that, we go directly to the combat phase, and the fight between the Balefire Carnival as well as the Beast of the Midian was awe-inspiring. First of all, my opponent decides to declare a challenge with his general, so because that, Inkari, the Ravager of Ulthuan, is more than happy to answer the call. Unfortunately for me, I did suffer 2 wounds from the Strigoi Ghoul King. However, when it was all said and done, I just decapitated that Strigoi Ghoul King with Inkari. She was an absolute beast. Managed to kill him with an additional wound to spare, so that part was pretty awesome as well. The rest of the combat, of course, followed out afterwards. As you can see, I killed a bunch of ghouls when it was all said and done, and they only managed to put 1 wound onto Jacques the Overseer, as well as kill one of my Bestigors as well. Needless to say, I won this combat by a landslide, which was going to cause, of course, additional loss to take place, but because my enemy's general is dead, he decides to call a game at this point. Screamo the Emo realizes that he's going to be taking criminal checks next turn. He doesn't have any really chance of actually saving the game, so because of that, he just kind of calls at this point, netting a victory for the Legion of Chaos of Slaanesh. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the After Action Report because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright, now it's time for the After Action Report. This is part of the battle report. We talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the After Action Report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 96, and this one ended up being a victory for yours truly. In the end, I was able to score 1,963 points against Screamo the Emo, and Screamo the Emo was able to score 905 points against me. In the end, I lost Telemac and Laris, the Mass Fiend, the Children of Ryan, the Nightkin, as well as the Resplendent Stalkers. Meanwhile, Screamo the Emo, he lost Marduk von Koss, the Baron of Drachenfels, the Hounds of Tindalos, the Ravenous, the Mask of Black Death, the Mask of Red Death, the Ghost Knights of Vergun, the Calliope of Chaos, as well as the Volkar, the Beast of Bloodfold. And this game was insane, just to let you guys know that right off the bat. Totally just steamrolled right over Screamo the Emo's forces in this one as well. And the reason why is because my armor is pretty much dominating in the movement phase as well as the magic phase, and on top of that, I definitely dominated in the combat phase as well. And like I said before, this army is very fast. It's a very fast-moving army, and it relies upon coordinated attacks, and this battle pretty much shows it. In retrospect, of course, the way I'm thinking about it though, Screamo the Emo's dice really abandoned him on this one. And it really did so specifically during the magic phase, or more specifically, lack thereof a magic phase. Vampire count armies are very dependent upon the magic phase, and if they have a really bad magic phase, it can really hurt them a lot. In this case, that's what happened here. Screamo the Emo lost a lot of his points because he wasn't able to recomp them using his spells from the Lore of Vampires for the most part. So because he was able to cover his losses like he usually does, it really impacted him as well. Another factor that really helped me out in this battle, of course, were my Demons of Slaanesh, and the reason why is because they shredded through his ethereal units pretty quickly with their magical attacks. Screamo the Emo does really rely upon his hex rates in order to soul reap a lot of units and to cause a lot of problems to kind of whittle his opponents down before he decides to close in, and he wasn't able to do that this time, so it really messed him up for the most part as well. Currently, right now, my Slaanesh Legion of Chaos right now is standing at 4 wins as well as 0 losses, which is pretty awesome. And basically, I'm having this army go through running the gauntlet basically for every single army that we have in the studio, so that way we can see exactly how it stacks up over multiple games, so that way we have a good idea of how this army works. In the end, however, this game was still a fantastic game. It's always a good time to play against Screamo the Emo, and as always, I can't wait for the rematch on this one. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. You guys' input is always appreciated. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to our channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. That's number 96 in the books. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, you guys.